Prime Minister chose a trip to Albania to make his announcement that the government was engaged in talks to send failed asylum seekers to return hubs in Europe. It inevitably raised expectations that Albania might be one of those hubs, especially as Albania has already allowed Italy to build a large centre for illegal migrants on its soil.
We are in talks with a number of countries about return hubs, and I see them as a really important innovation.
To be very frank with you, we have been asked by several countries if we were open to it, and we said no, because we are loyal to the marriage with Italy, and the rest is just love.
Number 10 said that response from Albania's Prime Minister came as no surprise. Government sources said they realised Albania did not want to be seen as a dumping ground for lots of better-off European countries' unwanted migrants. The Prime Minister, unusually, chose to take only one broadcaster, GB News, with him for this trip, suggesting he hoped to land a hardline message on immigration.
I'm concerned that the last 4 years under the last government have risked us becoming an island of strangers. And that's why I'm clear that we shouldn't be an island of strangers.
This was searched within the panels of this van.
Oh, so within the panels itself?
The Prime Minister inspected Albania's border security measures. The government admits it is talking to other countries in the Balkans about hubs that could detain failed asylum seekers. Keir Starmer in recent months has talked to Italy's Prime Minister Meloni about Rome's controversial attempt to use Albanian camps for migrants. One member of Labour's sister party in Italy said the UK government should not be copying Italy's approach.
Yes, I am horrified. Actually, I am horrified. And I am. It's not something new. I mean, we are... The scheme is quite clear. The scheme of every European government that makes deals with third countries in order to control the migration flows, the migratory flows. All the stories may differ, end up in the same result, that is blatant violations of fundamental human rights.
Some government sources said the UK may yet be able to send failed asylum seekers to Albania, paying Italy to use the site they've built there. Conservatives said the government should never have dropped their now cancelled plans for removing those who arrive on small boats to Rwanda without delay.
Well, I'm joined now by the Labour peer Lord Dubs, who fled Nazi Germany as a child and is a member of the all-party parliamentary group on migration. Lord Dubs, is the Prime Minister right to try and set up these return hubs, if not with Albania, then with other countries?
Well, we don't really know enough about it yet. After all, the news has only just come through. There is a problem. If we're dealing with failed asylum seekers and we can send them back to the country they came from, fine. That's what we should do if they really fail the asylum test. But to send failed asylum seekers to a third country, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to stay there forever? Are they going to be detained? It just isn't clear enough to know what to do. It is right the government should be returning people who've no business being in this country, and asylum seekers are clearly in that category. But I repeat, we need to know far more about it before we can say this is a tenable idea. At the moment, it does not sound a good idea.
Does it sound a bit like the old Rwanda scheme, do you think? Even though the government's at pains to point out it's very different because these are failed asylum seekers that would be being sent there.
Well, it is different. I think the Rwanda scheme was even worse, because we're going to send people there, have other people determine whether they have a right to asylum, and nobody knew what their future was going to be. No, right. It isn't that. But I do think we've got to be really careful. I understand the government's difficulties. I have sympathy with the government's difficulties, and some of the stuff in the white paper will probably be helpful. But I think this particular idea has to be scrutinised very hard, because, you know, to repeat myself, what are we going to do? We're going to send people to a distant country, Albania or wherever, and they're going to stay there forever because they have no right. They have no right to be given asylum here. We've deemed that. They can't go back to their own country, I assume, because if they could, that's where they should be. So they're simply going to be marking time in a different country.
But you do say you sympathise with the government's problem. You know, record migrant numbers more broadly, and also record number of people crossing the boat and crossing the channel in small boats. So you sympathise that the government has to be more radical than it has been in the past?
Well, the last government wasn't radical at all, of course. They made a complete mess of things. After Brexit, immigration figures went up. After all, the asylum seekers, they're a significant number, but they're still a very small proportion of the total net immigration. Most of the people there are other categories altogether who are given permits and things, so it's a different problem.
OK, but when you hear your Prime Minister, your Labour leader, talking about becoming an island of strangers, and, you know, he's praised by the hard-right Hungarian government, that people say there's echoes of Enoch Powell, something he denies, but do you sort of wonder whether he's lost his way somewhat on this issue?
Well, this is not the Keir Starmer I know and have for a long time had a great deal of respect for. I don't like that particular expression. It's not an expression I would use because it leads to misunderstandings. And above all, when we have people from other countries coming to live here, we want them to be welcome and integrated in our society. And if we call them strangers, it's hard for local communities to be as welcoming as they want to be. And I think the great thing about this country is we have over years had people who've come here and they've been welcomed and they've been helped to integrate into our local communities.
Well,
and this is a step in a different direction.
Well, you are one of those people who came to this country, you fled Nazi Germany. When you hear Keir Starmer talking about the incalculable damage done to the economy by mass migration, does it make you sort of question your membership in the Labour Party? Does it make you question whether this government is an inclusive government?
I'm not doubting my membership of the Labour Party. That is firm, and that will stay. And within the Labour Party, we can argue our corner. We can say what we think is the right thing to do. I think, on the whole, immigration is actually of benefit to the economy. It provides workers for industries and occupations which we can't normally fill. So it's a positive thing. And if we look at the white paper, it's going to be very critical of people getting visas to work in our care system. Well, we're going to be short of people working in our care system, whether it's home support or whether it's in care homes. So I worry about that. But I don't doubt my membership of the Labour Party for 1 second. I'm proud to be a member of the Labour Party. And if I have to argue a little bit about changes in policy, I shall do that.
When you said this isn't the Keir Starmer you know, using this language, do you think he doesn't really believe it himself?
Oh, look, I can't presume to comment on that. All I know is that when I've spoken to him in the past and when I've supported him in his campaign for the leadership, I felt confident that I knew the sort of person he was. And just occasionally there's been a hint recently that he's been saying things which are out of character for him, I believe. But quite honestly, who am I to judge his character? I judge him on his policies.
Lord Alf Dubs, thank you very much for joining us.